On a frozen lake in Sebaste, Armenia, in the year 320 AD, 40 elite Roman soldiers stood naked in the snow. Stripped of their armor and clothing only moments beforehand, they stood there through the cold and bitter night. By morning, most of them, if not all of them, would be dead. They were part of Rome's famed 12th Legion, warriors, gladiators, champions of the empire. But now, they had been charged with treason, not because they betrayed Caesar, but because they refused to betray someone else. Someone, somehow, who had more authority than the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on earth. By the year 320 AD, Christianity had spread deep into the Roman Empire. It had reached cities, homes, and even the ranks of the military. But to be a Christian, although technically newly legal by Emperor Constantine, was a crime punishable by death according to the other co-emperor. Licinius, emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, saw Christianity as politically dangerous since it was associated with Constantine's influence. And in this Roman province of Armenia, in this city called Sebaste, there was a legendary unit within the 12th Legion. They were known as simply the 40. Chosen from among Rome's strongest to compete in public games. They fought not just on the battlefield, but in the arena, and even before the emperor himself. These men were famous throughout the whole empire for their ability. They were known for one thing even more so than their strength, their loyalty. And before every contest, these men would stand in the arena of blood and raise their voices in unison and cry,
"We are 40 wrestlers, wrestling for thee, O Emperor, to win for thee the victory, and for thee the victor's crown."
The crowd would roar. The emperor would smile. These men were truly the empire's finest. But then came a new command. Word had reached Emperor Licinius. Some of this elite group of soldiers had become Christians. Men who had sworn their lives to Rome were now pledging their allegiance to Christ. The emperor issued a decree. All soldiers must make sacrifices to Roman gods, and any who refuse will die. That order made its way to Sebaste, which is now in modern-day Turkey. The legion's commander in Sebaste, Agricola, under the direct command of Emperor Licinius to go through his ranks and find any Christians and kill them, gathered his men. He read the edict aloud, slowly, deliberately. Then he looked him in the eye and said,
"An edict has come from the emperor. If there are any Christians among you, I am asking you to confess to being Christians. And I am told that a Christian will never deny he is a Christian. But I want to say before you confess that you are a Christian, that if you do this, that you will surely be put to death."
Then Agricola asked, "Are there any Christians?" Silence. Then one man stepped forward, then another, until all 40 men stood as one. All 40 of these soldiers had given their hearts and their lives to Jesus Christ. Agricola couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had expected hesitation, maybe one or two devout men, but not all 40, not of his best soldiers. They knew better than to waste their time worshiping a crucified slave. These were not rebels or cowards. They were Rome's champions, warriors who had fought in blood-soaked arenas, who had stood unshaken before emperors. Men who once cried out to Caesar with pride now stood there in silence. But for someone else. But for Christ. Agricola pleaded with them.
"Think about your future. Think about your glory. Denounce him with your lips. Just your lips. And you can go free. You can fight again. Eat again. Live again."
But not one of them moved. Their silence said everything.
"I cannot put you to death by the sword. I believe you have not thought it through. Surely you will renounce your faith."
So Agricola, in pride with his new plan, issued the sentence. It was the dead of winter. The lake outside Sebaste was frozen thick. Agricola lit a great, roaring fire on the shoreline. One by one, he stripped the 40 soldiers. Their helmets removed, their breastplates pulled away, their greaves taken, their shoes taken, their shirts, their undergarments stripped down to absolutely nothing. down to the bare skin in sub-zero wind. And he turned them away in the darkness and told them that they will stay out there in the darkness until they freeze. But he said, if any of you out in the cold and the darkness decide you want to renounce Christ, all you have to do is come to the fire. Then he left them there, naked, on the ice, beneath the stars. For hours, nothing, just the howl of the wind. Expecting them to come, nearby, warm baths were prepared on the shoreline. But he wasn't prepared for what he was about to hear. He began to hear the chant that he had heard so many times, but now it was different.
We are 40 wrestlers wrestling for thee, O Christ, to win for thee the victory, and from thee the victor's crown.
Agricola snarked.
They're chanting now, but just give them some time. They'll come.
Throughout the night, as the cold grew deeper, they heard this chant, 40 wrestlers wrestling for thee, O Christ, 40 wrestlers wrestling for thee, O Christ, to win for thee the victory, and from thee the victor's crown. It grew weaker and weaker and weaker as they were bit by the cold. Their voices cracked, their bodies trembled, some collapsed, others whispered the words through clenched teeth. But then, they stopped. Agricola watched from the shore. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The fire was enough. The heat, the steam. It was the promise of their survival. He was waiting for someone to break. Agricola looked. Through the haze of the moonlight and the mist, a shape appeared, crawling, staggering, dragging itself on the ice toward the fire. A soldier, one of the 40, slithering across the ice, turning his back on Jesus. Agricola stepped forward. He looked down at the man who had once shouted in the Emperor's games. Here he comes, the rest will soon follow, I knew it. I know men. He turned his back towards the ice, expecting the rest of the 39 to follow. And out of the darkness came the sound of one voice. 39 wrestlers wrestling for thee, O Christ. Another voice joined in, then another. To win for thee the victory, and from thee the victor's crown. Then something happened that he didn't expect. One of the guards, a man stationed by the fire, stepped forward. He looked across the ice at the bodies huddled in prayer, in pain, in worship. Then he looked at the miserable form of the slithering man on the ice in front of him, coming to the fire. Then, that guard removed his helmet, took from his chest his armor, took from his back his shirt, took from his feet his shoes, and ran to the 39, saying, 40 wrestlers wrestling for thee, O Christ, to win for thee the victory, and from thee the victor's crown. Jesus fought for me. I want to fight for him. Most of them died that night. They froze before morning, and their bodies were gathered to be burned, and their ashes dumped into a river. But they froze in faith. One gave in, another took his place. And the chant that once echoed for an emperor became a hymn for Christ. There are still frozen lakes in the world, still fires on the shore, still choices to be made in the dark. And sometimes, the truest victory comes not from fighting, but from standing and not moving. Jesus never promised that following him would be easy, only that it would be worth it. For those men, the crown wasn't made of laurel or gold. It was the crown he gives, the one found on the other side of suffering. Thank you for watching this video. The message of Christianity, although it lives in the lives of so many of us today, was absurd when it first came about. If you're interested in learning more about the absurdity of Christianity, especially in the context and when it first arrived, click here. I think you're going to enjoy that video. Thank you for watching.